Welcome to Terrifying Tales, the channel dedicated to bringing you original horror stories. Please support the channel by hitting the like button or leaving a comment, and please consider subscribing to the channel by hitting the subscribe button on the bottom right hand corner of the screen. Prefer to read yourself? A written version of the story is available to read on Substack, and the link is in the description. A Rainy Night in Seattle by C.J. Knight. The Seattle streets glistened beneath the downpour from the grey clouds above. Dim light from the street lamps cast reflections across the pools on the slick pavement. Everything between hidden in shadows. In Belltown, the diners were closing and the bars thinning out. The downpour failed to quell the rolling fog as it crept in from the waterfront. Caleb held his umbrella over them as they turned off First Avenue. "Are you sure you want to cut through this alley?" "It's a lot quicker," Lyra said, her voice melodic beneath the rain. "And quieter." Lyra was slim and elegant. Her porcelain beauty turned heads all night. She wore a long coat over a red velvet dress that clung to her frame. The mist slicked her black hair down, and when she smiled, Caleb couldn't help but smile too. The pair met earlier that week at a bookstore near Pike Place Market. Lyra was standing in the poetry section, thumbing through Baudelaire. Something about her drew Caleb in. Lyra had the book open to The Vampire. Lyra looked up from the page, catching Caleb off guard. Her eyes were a shade of violet under the dull lights of the bookstore. In a moment of panic, he joked about vampires. Instant regret filled his heart. Of all the things he could have said, this was somewhere near the bottom. Expecting a scoff, Caleb prayed for the ground to open beneath him and swallow him whole. Instead, Lyra smiled and said, "I like the night." He was caught off guard a second time when she accepted his invitation for dinner. Now they were walking through a narrow alley, cut between old buildings with faded murals and broken fire escapes. Caleb hesitated, peering into the dark ahead. "We could loop back around to Western Avenue." Lyra gave him a look. Her eyes catching the street lamp, returned to the shade of violet that'd been in the bookstore the night they met. "Do you trust me?" He nodded. "Yeah, I do." They reached the midpoint of the alley when the figures stepped out of the shadows. 3 of them, gaunt and feral, their faces covered in meth sores. The knife blades in their hands glistened despite the dark clouds in the sky. "Where are you two headed?" said the leader, Eddie. Tall, wiry, twitchy. "You're off the map now." Caleb stepped in front of Lyra. "We don't want trouble, just let us through." The second man, Marsh, laughed. Stocky, shaven head, fists like bricks. "Trouble finds anyone who wanders our way, whether they want it or not." The third man, rat-faced, with a black tribal tattoo stretching across his throat, spat on the ground. "Check her purse, then check her. We've got time." His name was Red. Caleb clenched his fists. "Leave her alone." Eddie lunged before Caleb could react. He felt a weight in his stomach as Eddie struck. Caleb staggered backward, but the weighty feeling remained. He stared at his stomach in disbelief. The knife handle was sticking out of his stomach. A red stain spread out from the handle. Caleb dropped to his knees. "It didn't have to be like this," Eddie said, stepping forward. Caleb cried out as Eddie ripped the knife free from his stomach. The red stain spread further across his shirt. Blood pooled in the rain-soaked alley beneath him. Lyra's heels clicked on the alley pavement as she stepped forward. Eddie pointed the blood-soaked blade at her. "Don't scream." Her delicate fingers curled around his wrist. "I wasn't going to scream," she said, her voice low. "But you will." The sound of splintering bone filled the alley as her fingers tightened. Eddie screamed. It pitched higher as Lyra tightened her grip even further. His grip on the knife gave way. Lyra's free hand shot forward and caught the blade in the air. She drove it into his neck. Eddie tried to speak, but only blood ran from his lips. His body went slack. Lyra pulled the blade free and let go of his wrist. He dropped to the pavement like a sack filled with bricks. The other two men stood frozen. "What the fuck?" Red whispered. "Did she?" Lyra licked the blade of the knife and tossed it away. She turned to the other men, her violet eyes punctuated by the grey of the storm clouds above. Marsh swung at her with his blade. She caught his wrist mid-air. "No," she said calmly. "You don't get to walk away." Her hand snapped upwards, sending the blade through Marsh's eye. His body slammed onto the pavement and spasmed violently. A death rattle echoed deep in his throat. Red ran. He made it 3 steps before Lyra moved. To Caleb it was a blur. One moment Red was upright. Next he was screaming, held aloft by Lyra. Her hands around his throat. His feet kicked uselessly. "Please," he choked, "please." Lyra didn't reply. She opened her mouth. A tearing sound echoed through the alley. The skin of her cheeks ripped away. Lyra opened her mouth wider, revealing 2 rows of razor-sharp teeth. They weren't in neat rows. They were jagged and pointed in all directions like barbed wire. Red sobbed as Lyra pulled him close. Her jaw clamped down on his throat. Blood sprayed feet in the air. Lyra moaned hungrily as she drank. The spurts of blood eased in distance and momentum the more she drank. Her body trembled as she drained him. When Lyra finally dropped Red's body, it barely made a sound on the pavement. His body was no more than a drained husk. The alley went still. Lyra lifted her face toward the sky, allowing the rain to kiss her face. Caleb groaned in pain, leaning against the cold brick of the alley, body pale, blood seeping through his fingers to the pavement below. Lyra turned, blood smeared across her face. Caleb flinched. "What are you?" Lyra knelt beside him. Her fingers found his wound. "You killed them. Jesus, Lyra." "I was going to kill you," she whispered. "The bookstore, the wine bar, this alley. It wasn't a coincidence." Caleb stared at her in disbelief. "You lured me?" "I was hungry," she said, "and I liked you. That makes it easier. But then you stepped in front of me. You told them to leave me alone. You tried to protect me without a second thought." "You were going to kill me," he said again, voice shaking. "Yes," she said, "but I'm not going to." He laughed. "Because I took a knife for you?" "No one's done anything like that for me in a very long time." She tilted her head. Distant sirens were closing in. "Police are on their way." "I need a hospital." Caleb winced. Lyra hesitated. Then she reached into her coat and pulled out a small vial. Inside, a thick shimmering red liquid glowed faintly. She pressed it into his hand. "Drink this. All of it." "What is it?" "Blood," she said. "Not mine. Old. Strong. It'll heal you." He stared at it unsure. "You expect me to drink this?" "Or bleed out," she said, rising. He looked at her, then at the dead men. Caleb removed the cap from the vial and drank. Copper and fire passed through his lips. His body convulsed. Warmth surged through him. The pain dulled, then vanished. Caleb pulled up his shirt. The wound was closing over. "You'll feel weak for a day," Lyra said, "but you'll live." "Will I change?" Caleb asked. "Will I become like you?" "No," she said. "You haven't been bitten." Caleb nodded, uncertain. Lyra stepped back into the shadows. "Forget about me, Caleb." "I don't think I can." She smiled. but sadness remained in her violet eyes. Then try. Caleb picked himself up from the pavement. Lyra was gone. 2 weeks later, Caleb sat alone at the same bookstore, thumbing through Baudelaire. "That's a good one." He looked up. Lyra. Her hair was dry this time. Her coat, deep emerald green. "You came back," he said. There was something different about her. It was her eyes. Caleb saw the uncertainty. "Do you want to grab a cup of coffee?" Lyra smiled. "That would be nice." This time, the smile reached her violet eyes.